Welcome into the Fantasy Guides podcast. My name is Andrew Teuscher, and I am joined today by the owner, the operator of Fantasy Guides, Stephen Rippey, as well as former college football player and current college football sicko, Jesse Preston, and Fantasy Guides contributor, Jacob Rhodes. And today, we have assembled, gentlemen, to talk about one of the most important things in fantasy football preseason scouting looking is finding sleepers. We're going to look for some of the best sleepers we can find this season. And I know you guys are amped up. Jesse, I know you were really looking and studying really hard right before this just to make sure that you had the best for us. Isn't that right?
That's right. You know, this has been a tough week for my fantasy football research because NCAA 25 has taken up about 97% of my brain power. But hey, I got a victory, user-on-user victory tonight right before this pod, so I'm feeling good. 1-0 against users. Lifetime,
I do have
NCAA.
Maybe you guys can get more into it at the end of this, but Jesse, I do have one question. What was your first offensive play?
My first offensive play against Chad?
Yeah. Well, when you started playing the game, I heard you guys talking about some people maybe just would do like a knee to start or like a halfback dive to get the jitters out. I'm just curious what your first play was.
No, I didn't have the wherewithal to take a knee on the first play just to like show mercy to Chad. I definitely ran my favorite running play. There's a power O run out of the shotgun that's when a guy just likes to blitz everyone, it works really, really well. So
all right, power O. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I have not had as much luck in user games early on, so we'll talk about that later. But that's why Jacob's feeling great. Jacob loves the game, loves playing as Coastal Carolina. We'll get to that later. Jacob, how are you?
I'm great. The Field of Teal was running wild last night. It was good.
Yeah, forget your Field of Teal. Let's get into sleepers, all right? All right, so we are going to be looking for guys, sleepers. Like, they're not falling asleep on the practice field. They're not skipping practice and sleeping at home instead. We are looking for players who are being underrated and could have huge value and explode and do great things for your team. We're not just looking for guys who are being taken as like our running back 45 and they could maybe finish as running back 35. We're looking for dudes that could wake up and win you your league, win you a week, do great things for your team. That's what we're looking at for sleepers. And we've got a couple of ranges I made these gentlemen look into. Because sleepers have changed so much. It used to be like 5th, 6th round. You could find a sleeper that people hadn't heard of. But these kids in the internet works too well these days, and everyone knows all the sleepers. So we're going round 7 and 9 as our first light sleep we're going to look into. Some guys that are definitely sleepers, but a little bit higher up. And then we're going deep sleep, going round 10 or later. So we're going to sweep through this first round of sleepers, and we're going to start off with Steven. And Steven's going to start off with the best running back in the NFL that I am contractually and morally obligated to say every single time. Devin Singletary, who is on average going in the 8th round as the RB33. Steven, why on earth is Devin Singletary your sleeper?
I didn't think you would be. You put the picture up last week of him in his rookie uniform wearing number 40, no visor, no arm bands, nothing, just looking boring as hell. But you, I think, said at the time, if you just squint your eyes, you see that number 26 now in a Giants uniform, kind of looking like Saquon Barkley. That's what I've been doing. I've been drafting him. So I've been doing these mock drafts for the past couple of days is some of the content we're putting out. So I've done over 50 mock drafts in the last couple of days, and he just looks like he stands out so much in the 8th and 9th round. I've got a ton of him on the mock drafts I've been doing, but I think he's a great value and especially useful for anyone who's going wide receiver early, going heavy early, or if they take a quarterback or tight end early and are a little bit weak at running back. Like, I love him. I think that the dead zone of running backs is actually pretty good this year, and he's probably my favorite at value. I think he's going to be one of those RB2/flex plays that gives you RB1 weeks. And partly because, Andrew, like you said, he's good. He has a 4.6 yard per carry.
Best running back in the NFL.
What's that? Yeah,
best running back in the NFL. I have to say it.
Yeah, he has a 4.6 yard per carry career average. He's shown he can handle a heavy workload. He averaged 19.4 touches over his final 9 games last year. During that span, he scored 8 touchdowns, had 3 top 10 finishes, averaged 14.3 points per game, which ranked 16th. He's also been a solid receiver for his entire career, having no fewer than 29 receptions at any point. And you have to remember, he's never been like the main guy. A lot of times he's been splitting work, and he still managed to get a lot of work in the receiving game. However, this year, I think he's in store for a massive workload. The running backs playing behind him have 18 combined rushing attempts for their career.
That's crazy.
And none of them have draft capital any higher than the 5th round. So many of the running backs that are getting drafted ahead of him are in absolutely known timeshares. That includes Kenneth Walker, DeAndre Swift, the Steelers backfield, the Titans backfield, even Raheem Mostert, Nick Chubb, Zach Moss, Austin Eckler. We know those guys are getting 50%, 60% of the snaps at best. Last season, sharing a backfield with Dameon Pierce, Devin Singletary dropped below 70% snap share only 4 times in the final 12 games. And I think he's got a shot to do as well as any of those backs ahead of him, but he's going after all of them. Like you said, he's, what'd you say, the RB32?
33.
RB33. I've been getting him in the middle of the 9th round consistently, and I pretty much draft him every time. And knowing that he's there has kind of changed some of my draft plans, right? Where I'm even fine taking him a little bit early just to make sure I get him, because I still think he's a value where he's going. He also stands out in that range against some of the other positions who have question marks. Wide receiver, quarterback. You got Keon Coleman, JSN, Christian Watson, TJ Hawkinson, Trey Benson. All of those guys are kind of going around his range, and I think we all would agree there's some question marks there. I just love that Devin Singletary, you know what you're getting with him. We know what the workload is. We know we can count on it. So I think he's going to make a solid RB2/flex option this season.
Jacob, I want you to bet this for me, because I don't want to attack Devin Singletary, because he's the best running back in the league, and I am legally not allowed to attack Devin Singletary.
Okay.
But are you at all concerned that he might follow the path of one Miles Sanders last year, who last year found himself getting paid by a team to be their RB1, but the team was so bad with a terrible offensive line? I mean, again, I would never attack Devin Singletary, but Jacob, I'm throwing it out here for you. Are you concerned that he's behind PFF's 29th ranked offensive line in an offense that ranked 30th in points scored last year?
Those are some good points you bring up on someone you can't talk bad about.
No, I'm just saying it could be, someone could be concerned about that. It's not
Careful.
me.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So I think Chuba Hubbard was always better than Miles Sanders, for one. I don't think there's a Chuba Hubbard in New York. There's no one to take carries away from Devin Singletary or
Pause
volume
there, Jesse.
of any matter.
Tyrone Tracy, have you watched much film on him? He's someone getting hype out of camp, most legitimately.
Tracy's good back. He's gonna do well. Hey, did you guys know? Do you know what Devin Singletary's nickname is?
Motor.
I've never heard that before. Had you heard that, Steven?
No, but it makes sense. He looks like a compact little motor,
Yeah. I will say the
Andrew.
concern for him is, did anyone see the Daniel Jones flat route clip? He was thrown to Devin Singletary, and it was about a 5-yard pass, and I think he threw it 20 yards over his head.
I did see it. Listen, I will say his ceiling is limited. Notice
is.
I didn't say he's going to finish as an RB1. I think what you're counting on is as somebody that you're drafting as an RB3 that can finish as an RB2, but he can have some top 10 finishes. He had, like I said, over the final 9 games of the season, he had 3 times where he finished in the top 8, actually. So I think he's going to give you some boom weeks. And, yeah, especially if you went wide receiver heavy, I think he makes a great play.
Yeah. Hey, my sleeper sounds an awful lot like that.
I just saying, I have my concerns for him. The offense has to score enough for him to be relevant. I don't think there's a ton of upside, but in all fairness, he's the RB33. Gentlemen, I'm not good at math, but there are 32 NFL teams, and he is likely the starter for one of them. So at least early on in the season, Devin Singletary is going to return value. It's nearly impossible that he does not. Before I accidentally besmirch his name any further, Jacob brought up his sleeper, so let's go ahead and jump to him. Jacob's sleeper, the second sleeper we got here going around 7 through 9, he's actually going 9th round, 12th pick overall. Jacob's going expert mode, trying to the latest pick he could possibly go on sleepers. Brian Robinson from the Washington Commanders. Jacob, talk me into Brian Robinson, who might be in a committee, but you think he's going to come out of it.
Yeah, I'm not super worried about the quote unquote committee going on there, but to be fair to the ADP I picked, I was looking at overall ADP because redraft season's getting close, and he's actually at the end of the 8th round in consensus, so a little earlier than right before that 10th round spot there. But we saw Austin Eckler run the football last year, right? Everyone saw that. It didn't look very pretty.
I
Steve, you
watched
saw
him
it.
getting
No,
caught
I was
from
just going to
behind.
say he did roll his ankle like the first game of the season. I thought he
Yeah,
looked pretty good up until that point. Jacob, you play a lot of basketball. I'm sure you've rolled your ankle before.
I did
It's
tonight, actually.
Uh-oh.
so you tell me in 12 weeks if you're
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it's already sore. I would not be 100%. But I think even if Austin Eckler is solid this year, there is a certain running back that is gone from that back room now. That can, all that volume that's left, Austin Eckler can take that, and that's Antonio Gibson. He's gone. He's leaving 65 carries and 59 targets on the table for Eckler to take. That's plenty of volume for an RB2 and an offense that is going to feature the running back that's far superior, and I think that's Brian Robinson. Actually, until week 12 last year, he was the running back 5. I feel like everyone forgets that, but up until he got hurt in week 13 against the Dolphins, he was the running back 5 in fantasy. That's someone that offers a lot of upside for you. He offers a lot of touchdown upside. Rookie quarterbacks are friendly to running backs, not so much wide receivers as we've talked about before, but they are usually friendly to running backs. I think Brian Robinson's the clear-cut running back 1 on this team. You can get him at the end of the 8th round, at the 9th round, depending on where you're drafted. He's your running back 3 that has RB2 upside. He could even slip into that RB1 range if he's as good as he was last year. That offense should be a little bit better than it was last year under Sam Howell. I just think there's a lot of volume that's going to go his way. A lot of the between the 20s work and even that goal line work if they do get down there near the goal line. And even some receptions work. He was very efficient with his limited receiving volume last year. He was actually first in yards per reception in the entire league amongst running backs. So he can be efficient with limited receiving volume. You're not really counting on it with him. You're counting on the just big 15, 20 carries each game and maybe a touchdown each game if they get down there. It's someone that it's not going to be flashy to start every week. He's not going to be an RB1, but I think you can safely put him in your running back 2 slot and be just fine.
Yeah, I think that's you kind of put it right there at the end. Throw him in your RB2 slot. Jesse, Jaden Daniels finds himself leading this Washington Commanders offense. Mobile quarterback on the goal line. Totally a concern. Should we do we think it's going to be much of a concern with Jaden Daniels, or is he going to fold in half like a lawn chair before he gets the opportunity to rush for a goal line touchdown?
Man, I have no idea what to expect. The hype around Jaden Daniels is all over the place, right? I have concerns about his durability over the long term, but I do think that, if you want to run him when you're down in the red zone, you can kind of protect a guy a little bit more. Because you don't run him up between the tackles. You can read option and try and get him out on the edge. You can put him in a run-pass option type of situation where he's rolling out one way. And yeah, for the love of God, somebody teach the guy how to slide. I do think he could cut into some of those touchdowns, but I don't mind this as a sleeper pick. I think that this could work out.
Sam Howell had the same amount of rushing touchdowns as Lamar Jackson last year.
Yeah, and Sam Howell is actually a very underrated scrambling quarterback, but Jaden Daniels is more of an athlete than he was. So,
Yeah.
I think you can expect, some red zone stuff there. But we'll see, man. For me, it's just, if he stays alive and healthy for, most of the season.
Keyword if he stays alive, because he is a crash test dummy running around out there.
Well, and you've put out lots of good information about how, he's in a very select group of guys that have, won a Heisman and put up those kinds of numbers. It's basically him and 2 other players, Cam Newton and Kyler Murray.
Indeed.
So, he's got the opportunity to be special for sure. He just looks so much like RG3 to me. I got that, little RG3 in the back of my head of, man, this looks really fun. And then he was out of the league. So it's like, what are we going to get? I'm excited to see. I might take him in the league just to see what happens. But yeah, no, I still think that Washington backfield's going to be interesting. I still think they'll be good.
Steven, what are your thoughts here on Brian Robinson?
Yeah, I think he's a guy that you maybe want to, like, I like drafting Jacob. I've done it actually in a couple of mocks. I think he's a guy that we're going to be looking to trade after the first, month or 6 games of the season. They've got the easiest schedule in our guide for the first month of the season. But like, if you just look at once you get to about week 10, they've got Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Dallas, Tennessee, who's got a good run defense. Then they got a late bye week, and then they've got New Orleans, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and then Dallas again. So like, it gets pretty rough. And I think it's going to be harder for him in some of those games because I do think they're going to be in a negative game script against teams that can stop the run. So I like drafting him. And then I think he's a guy I'm going to be looking to move, probably right before they play the Cleveland Browns in week 6 or week 5, I should say.
I like that.
And to the point of the rushing quarterback, Jacob brought up Sam Howell rushing touchdowns over Lamar. We think Jaden Daniels is a yes. We think Jaden Daniels is a Lamar-esque rusher. He is. Hear me clearly. Not built. Jaden Daniels is not built like an Anthony Richardson or a Jalen Hurts, as much as he likes to think he is sometimes. So Jackson, 5 touchdowns rushing, 3 touchdowns rushing, 2 touchdowns rushing each of the last 3 years. So if it looks like that, Brian Robinson will definitely get a chance to eat, unless Austin Eckler eats away at that. But I think he will definitely have some goal line opportunities. We all know James Conner got his chance to feast in the old Cliff Kingsbury offense, even with Kyler Murray running in double-digit touchdowns subseason. So running backs are going to eat at the goal line there. Moving us on from those couple of running backs, lots of running back sleepers in these rounds, and I think that's honestly pretty fitting. That's just where a lot of running backs are going this year, receivers being pushed up the board, so it's pushing some of these guys down. And it's pushing down a guy that we've been high on this entire offseason, and that's one Javonte Williams. And Jesse, we've talked about it, went out. This is his sleeper. He traded for him in a Dynasty League. Jesse is all in on Javonte Williams. Jesse, tell us about Javonte Williams and what you're expecting.
Yeah, my big thing is just the value that he provides currently. If you look at the tier of running backs that he's in, you can look through and count through almost every single one of them is either in a split backfield or there are some giant question marks. So I can give you example. Well, Devin Singletary we just talked about, which I like Steve's argument for that in that tier. But then besides him, you've got Zach Moss, split backfield. Gus Edwards, no idea what that backfield's going to look like. Pittsburgh, split backfield. Jonathan Brooks, is he going to be healthy? What's Carolina?
Nick Chubb is going ahead of him, and he doesn't have an ACL.
Nick Chubb, we don't even know if he's going to play for the first quarter of the season. Tyjae Spears, split backfield. Zeke Elliott, split backfield. Austin Eckler, split backfield. Chase Brown, Trey Benson, Jeremy Ford. Are you catching a theme here? I do think that Audric Estime is going to end up being an interesting handcuff. There is a lot of hype around him in Broncos minicamp. He's looked really good, and you got kind of a thunder and lightning thing going there. Jaleel McLaughlin is a really fun player. I love small school players and things like that, but Estime is an interesting handcuff nowadays. But I still think this is Javonte Williams' team, his backfield, and I think that the reason that he slid down into that tier is because the production dipped last year. People forget he came back really early from it wasn't like a little tiny ACL. It was like all of them were torn. It was like PCL, ACL, all the CLs were all gone.
It was Nick Chubb-esque.
Yeah, I think we just forget that he actually came back and was the starter game 1. If you read about it at all, he has slimmed down a lot. I guess he walked in. Sean Payton was watching film from him back at college, back at North Carolina, and he said, "How much did you weigh? Because this is the back that I want right here." And so that was a big target for them in the offseason, was to have him drop weight. I think that helps your knee as well, right, when you're trying to get that. So they think he's 100%, and I think anybody that was trying to bury him, I think it was extremely premature. And in that window where it's just a whole bunch of maybe 50-50 splits, I don't think it's a 50-50 split with Javonte Williams. And if you watch Bo Nix in college at all, I think I said this on our mock draft pod, he made Bucky Irving a superstar by checking down to him, by checking into running plays when he was supposed to. This is a smart young quarterback that is going to need a running back to be successful. So I think he's being extremely undervalued right now.
Well, and to pile on to Jesse's points here, if you guys remember a little over a month ago, posting about Sean Payton, you just talked about Bo Nix and how much he checks down at the running back. But also Sean Payton offenses haven't ranked worse than 5th in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The last 10 seasons. I had to count them. The last 10 seasons, the targets to the running backs have been in the top 5 every single season. So if you combine those two things, I got to think any running back behind that that Broncos offense is going to get targeted a lot in the passing game, which is a cheat code for your running back position.
Yeah, and even if Estime, Jacob's boy Estime, starts to turn it on and take more carries, he's not going to take more receptions. That Javonte is still going to be your target hog in the running back area. So Yeah, no, I just think it's a value play for me, and everybody's burying him after a so-so season when he was playing on half of a 1.5 knees. So I think he could come back with a vengeance this year.
Well, and
Yeah, it needs to be.
I could tell you, Andrew, a lot of people don't believe it. They think he's still going to get cut. I'm still getting the comments that he's getting cut. So
Samaje's getting cut. It's not Javonte. I think
Yeah,
that's crazy.
no, Samaje has a very limited range of abilities. He was great when we picked him up as just a backup, but yeah, there's no way that he's like taking that over.
No, we have to go back and remember Javonte Williams. His thing was breaking tackles, being electric, just like so much juice in everything he does. And when you tear every single ligament in your knee and you're down one leg, like for the next year, you're gonna lose some of that. And his thing isn't making the right decision to get to the right hole and be a responsive runner. He was explosive. You lose your knee, you're not gonna be explosive. So I think more than Breece Hall, even though Breece Hall even had the easier ACL to come back from, there was a lot of lateral movement that Javonte had to come back from. So it was like him as a running back prototype, his archetype, that being, was just devastated, especially bad by this type of injury. He received the 17th most weighted opportunities per game last year, and that was him coming back from injury. So imagine what they might do when he's healthy and looking good with those touches. It could be nuclear. Remember back in his rookie season, his sophomore season, when everyone was so excited when he got the heavy workload a couple of times? Remember that. Throw out last year. We've done this too many times where a guy comes back from injury and the year after we're like, oh, this guy is terrible. No. The year after. Anyway, moving on from our running backs, good little three-pack there of running backs. Devin Singletary, Brian Robinson, Javonte Williams. Gentlemen, this is a passing world we're in now. All right, receivers, quarterbacks are king. So let's talk about a sleeper at wide receiver, which it feels wrong that he's going ahead of the running backs you just mentioned, but again, that's just the ADP this year. Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is going in the 7th round, 6th pick in the 7th round. And last year was just one of those years. He's our guy this year who had no touchdown luck and just things didn't quite go his way. Last year, he finished as the 34th best wide receiver in points per game. That was with 131 targets, 83 receptions, 1,024 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Well, the year prior in 2022, when he was the 15th best wide receiver in points per game, he had just 10 more targets. He had 1 more yard. He had 1 more touchdown. The big difference was he had 20 more receptions in 2022 than he did in 2023. And the reason why is because for some godforsaken reason, they decided to move Chris Godwin out of the slot. And this has been talked about a lot on a lot of pages, but it needs to be mentioned. It needs to be highlighted. Chris Godwin's slot rate in 2022, when he was the 15th best wide receiver in fantasy football, was at 72%. And then Dave Canales, as great as he is, Witten dragged that down to 38%. And his productivity went down with it. He made up for it with a little bit more efficiency, but the volume just wasn't there, and that's just who Chris Godwin is. And Chris Godwin has had top 12 wide receiver finishes alongside Mike Evans, so it's not a concern. And with Jameis freaking Winston at quarterback. So Baker Mayfield can be Jameis Winston level and still have Mike Evans, even though he's old and crusty, Steven. You can still have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin produce. Don't make the mistake, you do not have to pick one or the other. This team is going to have just as good of an offense, I think, next year. Dave Canales, losing him is a problem. This team went out and invested in its offensive line, and their offense overall got better. And their defense actually got worse, too. So this might be just as good of an offensive environment as it was last year, even though Canales is gone. So I'm not worried. I think the volume goes way more up. I think this offense is going to be plenty good, and him going back to his home in the slot, that's just going to set this nice baseline. If he can have a good touchdown year, to the moon. He could be top 10 again. Steven, you're the Buccaneers receiver guy, all right? Do you think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin can coexist in this offense?
Yeah, I like both of them this year. I liked both of them last year. It didn't work out for Godwin. I did not expect him to be moved out of the slot as much as he was last year. We posted about this a little while ago that he, from 2019 through 2022, when they used Godwin, like you said, a lot in the slot, he averaged 15 points per game. Think if we took Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's everybody's favorite slot wide receiver, and was like, let's go move you outside. Would any of us be excited about Amon-Ra?
I mean, we would be excited, but not as excited. We don't want that to happen.
No, I would move him so far down my rankings if I knew he was going to play a ton on the outside. It's just, receivers are good at what they do. He's a good inside receiver. Chris Godwin is. Mike Evans, he's the guy you have on the outside. I think having that kind of a dynamic setup is going to be good for both wide receivers.
My thing with Chris Godwin, Steven, you know how I will never own Ezekiel Elliott because of how badly I was burned by him? Godwin's kind of the opposite. He's like, every time I own him, he's produced. Like
You must have owned him between 2019 and 2022.
Yeah, I mean, he's been good, right? He's been pretty consistent, and it's not like he shot up draft boards either. He's been a value for many years, so I'm with you.
He has an overall wide receiver 2 finish on his resume.
He does.
Football.
And that was with 3 more receptions than he had last year.
I know. That's the crazy part.
So volume was still there last year, oddly enough, but last 2 years his receiving touchdowns are like way down from, I think, what his mean is. So I would expect some positive regression there. And he's never been worse than where he's being drafted right now outside of his rookie year. So It's a value anyway you slice it.
It's crazy. And he was good last year. Like, wide receiver 34, you can use that. He was 19th in receptions and 23rd in receiving yards. He just needs a couple more touchdowns, and that comes through very easily. Like, you give him the same stat line, 3 more touchdowns, we're talking a different story about Mr. Chris Godwin. So those are the guys we like in rounds 7 through 9. Chris Godwin, I forgot to mention, go on Underdog, draft you some Underdog, use promo code GUIDES, get you a free draft guide as well as a deposit bonus. Again, promo code GUIDES. He was my most drafted wide receiver just because you can get him so late. He's as a wide receiver 3, as a late wide receiver 3, you can get this man. So I cannot scoop him up enough. Again, go play on Underdog, use code GUIDES. Now we're moving out of that 7 to 9 range. Now we're going into these deep sleepers. I mean, like Steven, how tired he was before we got on this podcast when he was trying to set up a movie for his kids. He was about, I know you're thinking about it. He was thinking about conking out, but he didn't. He stayed strong for us, and now he's going to talk about sleepers instead of sleeping. Wouldn't you rather talk about sleepers instead of sleeping, Steven?
I rarely sleep, Andrew, so yes, I'll talk sleepers.
That's the spirit.
Yeah, no, my sleeper, very late. This is this if you'd like to be a daredevil a little bit. So this is a guy you get in the 14th round, Deshaun Watson of the Cleveland Browns, QB 22 right now. A lot of people have probably are turning off the podcast right now.
I'm locked in now.
No,
You got the Browns fan excited.
Nobody likes Watson for many reasons. 1, burning their fantasy team. 2, other things that have been talked about to death. But, I mean, if you think about
I don't
it.
know what he's talking about.
So this will either be, I'm going to say, Andrew, this will either be the last year that I recommend him, or it's the last year that he goes late because I was right, or because he did well. So I'm hoping it's the latter. He only played 5 games last year. And in those games, well, he played 6, but in week 7, he threw 5 passes before being removed from the game for, I believe it was his shoulder. But in those games, he averaged 17.8 fantasy points per game. I know it's a small sample size, but it was good for the QB 13 numbers. That was more than Patrick Mahomes, Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, and Joe Burrow, who are all going way ahead of him in drafts. He's got great weapons in Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy, one of Jesse's favorite sleepers this year, and then Elijah Moore. I think that's a solid receiving core. And even Jerome Ford out of the backfield, I think, is a good wide receiver. He had 44 receptions last year. And he's playing behind one of the best offensive lines in football. The team's not going to have Nick Chubb to start the season. I don't care how many pounds he's squatting right now. He's not going to be ready by week 1, in my opinion. And even if he is ready, they're not just going to hand over a heavy run workload to Nick Chubb. I think they're going to ease him back.
That bar had so many weights on it. Like, you see that? That was so cool. It was bending. He was bending metal, Steven. Nick Chubb can bend metal. You telling me he can't come back?
What's that, Jesse? Who's the X-Men character that can bend metal?
Magneto.
He's Magneto. Yeah,
What made you think Jesse was the go-to Marvel guy out of this
Are
group?
you kidding me? He's the comic book guy. He knows all that.
Are you a
stuff.
comic book guy,
it's not
Jesse?
bend metal though. It's like he confused me there because I was like, oh, what is he talking? It's like he can control metal. Yeah, so bending, I
Yeah,
guess, is one of the
Steve.
things you can do.
Sorry, control metal.
No,
so
man,
much
Dumb
different.
nerd.
yeah, just so you guys, I mean, this is probably Jacob and I have way too much in common. I can already tell. And we live too many states apart, Jacob. We'd be
We
bros.
do.
Yeah,
I
but
know.
no, I've been super into comic books ever since I was a little kid. It's basically comic books, NCAA video games, and then fantasy football. Those are like
This
my
is the
three
way.
most
Yep.
knowledgeable things.
Anyway, well,
Anyways.
Magneto. I lost my train of thought now, Andrew. What was
Nick
I saying?
Chubb
Oh.
is Magneto. What else? What's
They-
confusing about
I
that?
think they're going to rely. Watson is probably going to be relied on a little bit more as they ease Nick Chubb back into the game. This defense is good. It's going to put the Browns on the field. I think that it's a risk, high reward. A lot of times these late round quarterbacks can be league winners. This, like I said, you can get them in the 14th round. I don't recommend you just go into a draft to go. It's Deshaun Watson or bust. I mean, if you're in a bunch of drafts, a bunch of leagues, maybe for fun you do it in one of them. But if you're in just one league, he's not the guy I'm going to take first. But if for some reason you miss on all your early round quarterbacks, and there are some that we like I like where Lamar Jackson's going, I like where Kyler Murray's going, I like where Jaden Daniels is going. If you miss on some of those guys, though, I do like taking if you have to take a Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence or somebody like that, I do think Watson kind of makes a good backup plan. And if both work out, then you can stream the position between the two of them.
Yeah. On those notes, we've talked about this before, but the Browns ran the most plays per game last year, and they had the most air yards in the league last year. And a lot of that was with Watson out, but if you honest to God think that Joe Flacco is a better quarterback than Deshaun Watson, we need to have some conversations.
Super Bowl MVP Deshaun
don't say that to
Joe
Andrew.
Flacco. Super Bowl
Yeah,
MVP.
Yeah.
You know what? Jesse would know this. We were victims too. Joe Flacco can get on a run.
He did,
And
and
when
he
Joe
did. He was the
Flacco-
quarterback 3 in points per game last year.
In the year they won the Super Bowl, he hit a run that went right through my Denver Broncos, who should have won the Super Bowl that year. So I'm familiar with the Joe Flacco run, but yes, I would agree.
Yeah.
Overall, and Watson's still young. I think he can still run. As long as that shoulder can hold up, which I think it should, he can still throw. And you got to remember, this guy was a top 5 quarterback option. So I'm going to cling to it one more time. I'm hoping this year is the year.
Yep. I like them, and I think the Browns they're changing the way they run their offense a little bit, especially with the way Nick Chubb's health is like kind of teetering. Jerome Ford's not the kind of back they can just lean on for as many carries per game. They're going to pass the ball more. They've already started passing the ball more last year. I think it sets up well for him to succeed, and if he doesn't, you're right. This is it. They're going to Russell Wilson him.
If Nick Chubb can bend metal though, like he's Magneto, can he replace his bone with metal and just put a metal bone in his leg instead? Oh, wait, no, it's his ligaments. He could build metal ligaments. I believe in him.
Jacob, you got a sleeper?
I do. I have a really good sleeper.
All right, go ahead and talk. No, whoa, really good sleeper. Let me preface this. Jacob has a sleeper that you don't have to draft.
He's
All right?
asleep.
He is dead asleep.
Yep.
You can sleep through your draft and still acquire this man. That is how much of a sleeper he is. Jacob, please inform the group why you were so big, hot and heavy for
And let's
Darnell Mooney
Tone it down a little bit.
of the Atlanta Falcons. Why do you think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 overall next year?
Oh, you set me up well here to just fail.
You're welcome.
No, it is Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney is the wide receiver 67, and he's going round 14. So, yes, most of your drafts, he will be on the waiver wire, and week 1 waiver wire priority picks. He might just be number 1 on there from the old Fantasy Guides team. We'll see. But
I hold a lot of power there. I won't out of spite. He's now the 2 at the highest.
Okay, fair enough. But we've seen Kirk Cousins wide receiver 2s be just excellent before. As a matter of fact, I did some research there. Looking at just Vikings days for Kirk Cousins, where his wide receiver 2s were Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen most years, and then half of Jordan Addison last year because Kirk only played half the season. But if you take all of their targets, receptions, yards, touchdowns, games they played, you average all that stuff out, you extrapolate it to fantasy points, and you put that into a full season's worth of games, it's 237.36 fantasy points that wide receiver 2 for Kirk Cousins is putting up. Last year, that would have been the wide receiver 16, better than Chris Olave, And on a per game basis, wide receiver 24, better than Cooper Kupp. So I just think there is opportunity here for the wide receiver 2 on this team. Kyle Pitts could elevate, but last year, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson all had 100-plus targets. I think they can coexist a little bit. Kirk likes his tight ends. He's never really had an elite one aside from the last half of the year and the half of the year before that when they traded for Hawk midseason. We'll see how good Pitts is. Mooney has had fantasy success before with a terrible team, terrible situation. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity there. And I've shared this fun stat before. I'll share it one more time, but it's from Warren Sharp. Nearly 40% of deep targets to Mooney have been inaccurate in his career. That is absurd. Inaccurate.
Thank
but
you,
over
Justin
that span,
Fields.
yeah, over that span, the most accurate quarterback on deep targets, so 20-plus yards down the field, is Kirk Cousins. So I think they might just connect deep very often. I don't think this is going to be a consistent fantasy option for your team. He's better for best ball, but I do think it's someone we should keep our eye on.
Yeah, that's gross. But it makes a lot of sense. I went and saw that I think it was AJ in our Dynasty League picked up Ray McLeod.
Ugh.
And I thought, what on earth is he doing? Apparently, that is one of the receivers gaining a ton of hype for playing well and a little bit with the first team. Okay, Ray McLeod's getting on the field in 3 wide receiver sets. So if nothing else, that feeds into Jacob's mindset here. And Steve and Jesse, any thoughts on Darnell Mooney? Do you think he could also be the wide receiver 1 overall?
No, I don't think that that's going to happen, Andrew. But here's the move. Here's the Darnell Mooney move. So, I've been preaching that the Chargers defense is one that I like to target in drafts. I also like the Seattle Seahawks because the Seahawks more specifically play the Broncos week 1. The Chargers play Raiders aren't like a cakewalk, but they have the 3 easiest teams as far as like the first 3 games of the season. They play afternoon games. So if you're in one of those leagues where you don't draft a defense and you can pick up a defense like after the morning games or like in the middle of the morning games, Atlanta's got a morning game. See what Mooney does in that morning game. If he's a zero burger, doesn't do anything, just drop him, pick up one of those 2 defenses. If he looks awesome, well, then you're just going to have to hope that you can drop another position for one of those defenses. But I do think he's one of those guys you can take with your last pick and just see what happens that first week.
He's a draft and see what happens for sure.
I think Jacobs made such a good case for him this offseason. I've tried to acquire him in Dynasty.
He's impossible to get for some reason.
The pain in the ass is that everybody listens to this podcast, so you can't get Darnell Mooney in our Dynasty. But no, I think he makes a compelling case. Especially the one that boggles my mind is that how many times he's been inaccurately thrown to.
It's so bad.
That's rough.
40%.
Yeah.
Get ready, Pittsburgh, for the Justin Fields experience if the Russell Wilson one doesn't turn out. Jesse, quick quiz. Where did Darnell Mooney go to college?
Boy, I don't know if I could tell you. I don't think I know.
I weirdly remembered this one. Tulane University, go Mean Green Wave. Love that little thing. That thing is
They don't have
fierce.
the mean green is North Texas. Don't add the mean in there.
But it's a green wave.
It is
go
green
fierce
wave. You have
green
the
wave.
Yep, green wave. Yep.
Big green wave.
But
mean green wave.
mean green is North Texas. My son goes, "Why the hell are they mean green?" And then I had to explain the whole history behind that.
Another podcast.
Yeah,
Another
right.
podcast title right there. Why are they mean and green? But love that wave. It's fierce. All right, Jesse, going right back to you, though, because you got a sleeper. This has been your guy since last year, and I've given you crap for it, and I really, really didn't think that Chase Brown was actually going to be fighting to have a big role in this Bengals offense, but sure enough, it sounds like he might. Jesse, tell us a little bit about Chase Brown and why you think he's a great sleeper going in the 11th round.
Well, you guys have all these data and numbers and everything else. I just kind of read the tea leaves, and so if you just do a quick search, Chase Brown, minicamp, Bengals, here are some of the the headlines. Chase Brown gets plenty of run with the offensive starter. Chase Brown takes majority of reps with the first team. Chase Brown working with the starters a lot. NFL breakout candidates, and then there's like 4 articles there that people have now written. So we were talking about this previously. I think Zach Moss is a great backup running back. I just didn't, when he was acquired, I just did not think, oh man, here's their new bell cow. And so I think at the very least, we're talking like a 50-50 split. I think this guy wasn't on the field because he couldn't pass block. That is something you can teach, and that is something that he didn't learn at Illinois. So it's not that surprising. So I do think that, the area that this guy is going in drafts, There's a lot of value there. I wanted to take Roman Wilson. I just have to throw this in here again as a little news nugget. He was carted off the field, and the injury that he sustained, it looks just not great. Jacob, what was the sports analytics? What was the details?
90% by week 1, but like 6 to 8 weeks where he's going to have a high chance of re-aggravation.
Yeah,
So,
and when you're a rookie, you can't have that. It just sets you back because here you have
Yeah.
Calvin Austin III. He's been in the league for a while. He's no slouch of a slot receiver. He's just going to slide right in there. So there's a really, really deep sleeper for you guys. Now, there's a name nobody was thinking about earlier, but I think with Roman Wilson being hurt. But back to my boy Brown. I mean, he was a very, very, very productive college running back. And in spurts last year, he looked great. He looked like an NFL running back as a rookie. So, yeah, he's in that same window as all those other running back share committee running backs. I don't know. I just think he's going to have a little bit more action for the Bengals than people think. He's going after Zach Moss right now, even though I read off all of those, latest.
I can't believe you like a player with an Axiom helmet. I think that's just crazy to me.
Well, it may be that we have to just get with the times, Steven. I don't know. Yeah, as soon as somebody comes out in a Guardian cap, I may have to quit. I may just quit watching
I know
football
that's
at
going to be
that
a hard
time.
one to stomach. I gotta still see it. Are they putting a logo on it? How's that? It's going to be
I
bad.
don't know, dude. So we had a little league game that we went to, and I was so annoyed that there was a team that we played. They just all kept their Guardian caps on. None of them were even matching colors,
Oh.
And I'm just like, what are we doing here? We're really that worried about them knocking heads, So I think that there's some other ways that you could prevent head injuries in a game. They have those cool things you can put around your neck. Have you guys ever read about those?
No.
Yes.
Is it like a dog collar?
Yeah, it almost looks like a dog collar. It puts pressure on these arteries in your neck, and then it reduces the amount of blood to your brain. And it's like take creatine. I've heard that helps with contact to your brain. I mean, there's lots of things you can do. You don't have to wear one of those dumbass hats and look like Mark Kelso. Come on,
Yeah,
please.
you know what? Hey, you don't play football because you're, going to run Microsoft. You play football to entertain us.
That's right.
Yeah, as you listen to us, remember we all played football as kids, and that didn't negatively affect us in any way. Nick Chubb is Magneto. Anyway, we push forth. But before I go on to our last sleeper, to the Chase Brown, really explosive back. He was 4th last year overall behind Devon Achane, just right behind him in explosive run percentage. So 9.1% of his runs were deemed explosive, so big plays, 15 plus yards. Chase Brown, a lot of juice. If he gets a chance, the upside's huge because he's going to be in a good offense. He can catch passes. He just can't pass block, to Jesse's point.
That's a good point you bring
He
up.
couldn't
We've
last
talked
year.
about
He
we've
couldn't last year. Let's see
Yeah.
if he can now. Maybe he can now.
we've talked about a lot of running backs on terrible offenses. This is not one of those. This is a really good offense to be the running back 1 for. A lot of value there.
I will
want to take Chase Brown over Devin Singletary every day of the week. Sorry, Devin Singletary, you're the best running back. I would take Chase Brown over him.
I just want to point out, Jesse did write a whole article about him last year as a rookie about how good his college resume was. But what stood out to me, the 4.43 40 time, the 40-inch vertical, the 127-inch broad jump, and also this guy's got to get better at pass protection because he bench pressed 225 25 times. So you got to think that he's got to be able to pass block with that kind of. He's like a muscle hamster. Come on.
I watched those reps. It's not lazy. You'd watch him run out there, and he just would stand up straight. He'd run up to a guy and just shake his hand, I guess, because he just got plowed over. He tried. He was
His footwork
terrible.
needs some work.
Guys, think about the Wisconsin offense. Go back to Ron Dane and all those running backs. You know all the running backs that were better than Ron Dane that made it to the NFL. They don't line up in the shotgun and run pass plays. They just don't do it. So Brett Bielema is at Illinois running that same old school, pulling guards, handing it off, power O offense. He never did it. And it is a skill. You have to practice it like anything else if you've never been taught how to do it. So this is me going out on a limb on the, knowing football and being like, okay, it's you have to learn it. It's not but it is learnable. Also.
Exactly. It's a teachable
right
instinct. You can learn how to pass block.
Sure.
It should be fine.
No, if you want a good time watching football bloopers, go watch Jaden Daniels scrambling for runs and getting
Oh, those are
folded, and
really
Chase
good.
Brown
Yeah.
trying to block for his quarterback on third down. Those are both great times, great watches. College film is phenomenal. One guy who has not been in college for a long time, but is my sleeper, quite really could in a lot of ways not be more opposite of a player. Other than they play running back and they play for good offenses. Ezekiel Elliott is my late round sleeper, and I wasn't trying to push it. He's going in the 10th round. This isn't some 15th round Darnell Mooney, but he is an absolutely incredible value in my opinion. Ezekiel Elliott, he is old. All right, so I'm having to break a lot of moral rules in my heart in order to get him on here. So Steven knows this is big for me. Actually, even being willing to mention him due to his age. However, he's going off the board as the RB 38th in the 10th round, and we were just talking about Devin Singletary being the 33rd running back taken, and there's 32 NFL teams. This NFL team's good at football. This one's going to win games on the Dallas Cowboys will, and they're going to score points. They were the best offense in scoring points last year, were the Dallas Cowboys. And man, did they like running the ball inside the 5. Because Tony Pollard, who was terrible, he was awful at scoring touchdowns and converting on them. He got the 7th most runs inside the 5-yard line. And he converted on 6 of those. 6 of those became touchdowns. Alrighty, so that's just absolutely dreadful. I can't. They kept doing it, and everyone kept screaming that they had to stop doing it. And that's when their offense got better, is when they just stopped running Pollard. Zeke's expertise is doing that. Zeke only saw 5 carries inside the 5 last year while playing on the dreadful New England Patriots. That's why he only saw 5 of those. He actually had 65% right around of the teams inside the 5 carries. They just had so few, it didn't matter. But he converted on 3 of the 5. That's 60% of you, for all you guys out here who have not used the Guardian caps and hit our head a bunch of times. 60% conversion is a lot. Take that 17 and make it 60%, and that's more than he had last year, and better than Pollard, as I cannot do the math because I did hit my head a lot of times. So Zeke's going to get a lot of opportunities to score. He's good at converting them, and this is a volume in a good offense. Generally, you want to avoid guys in your fantasy football draft who are being drafted as running backs because of volume alone. This is where I'm giving Steve a little bit of grief for Devin Singletary. However, when we think this guy's going to get volume in a great offense, and why Singletary and Zeke are both good picks, is they're going late enough, it doesn't matter. What happens if you miss on Ezekiel Elliott in the 10th round? You cut him, and you forget he ever existed, go pick up Rico Dowdle, or Deuce Vaughn, or Malik Davis, whichever one of those 3 guys. Additionally, those 3 running backs are the dudes behind them. And any other options on this offense outside of CeeDee Lamb, basically non-existent. Brandon Cooks, Jake Ferguson, nope. Can you guys name another receiver on the Cowboys outside of Brandon Cooks?
Jalen Tolbert.
There's
Yes.
one.
There you go.
That's the one I thought you guys would get. There's another one out of Southeast Missouri State that is local to us, and I forget his name. But basically, there's no one here. So Ezekiel Elliott is absolutely an incredible value this year. I don't know how he doesn't smash that ADP. I guess he'd have to get hurt.
I think it's because he's fat and washed is why he doesn't smash that ADP.
Hey.
And I think that Rico Dowdle ends up being the starting back there, a guy that's going after him in ADP. There is some word out of camp that after the first day with pads on, Rico Dowdle looks like the Cowboys' early RB1. So I've been on board with all of these sleepers. I am very nervous about the Cowboys' backfield. I don't know which one of them. They might just kind of use 4 different guys and it becomes really ugly. Or Rico Dowdle. Is it going to be Zeke, really? I just can't. He has looked washed so many times in his career. The last time he was with the Cowboys, he looked washed. To me, it's the eye test. You just watch him play, and it's he does not look fast. He does not look like he's breaking tackles. Why did he not get the ball inside of the 5-yard line for that other team? It's because he's not going to score a touchdown because he sucks. But I hate Zeke. Steven knows this. He couldn't even trade him to me when it was going to win me a league. So, but it's the only one I got to disagree with.
Andrew, I don't hate the Zeke pick, but here's the reason. at least on Sleeper, when I've been doing mock drafts, why I have not been taking him. First of all, part of it is I go Jaden Daniels or broke in so many of these mock drafts I've been doing because I want Jaden Daniels in so many leagues. And he goes 2 picks after Jaden Daniels in ADP. He also goes right next to Cortland Sutton, who I also like as a sleeper, like in that same range, who's younger and I trust a little bit more. So that's part of the reason I haven't been taking him. And he also goes ahead of Chase Brown by a good 6 picks or so. So it's not so much that I dislike Ezekiel Elliott. It's just in that range of like some of the other players he's going. I just like some of those other players better.
Andrew, I think it's my turn. I think I'm actually with you, and I'm against Jesse and Steve.
Oh, okay.
And I have money, like hard-earned money, on Ezekiel Elliott this year. I got a season-long prop out for him for over 5.5 touchdowns. It's plus money, and I think that is like the easiest bet out there right now.
Over 5.5. So he's got to get 6 touchdowns.
6
How do you
touchdowns.
do that?
Do they have to be
you do
rushing,
that?
or they could be
Rushing touchdowns. Yep. Listen.
Zeke converted 60% of his rushing touchdowns last year.
There's good numbers here. The starting running back for Dallas has hit this every year since 2016, and that's mostly been Zeke. He's been mostly there since. But that's good. That's the guy that's hitting the mark. And Andrew talked about Tony Pollard getting a lot of inside the 5 carries. He got 57 red zone carries. That was second in the league. So there's a lot of volume that is out there. Rico Dowdle, not good. He is 26 years old. He has had his chance. You know what else he doesn't do is catch the ball. And you know what Zeke did a lot at the end of last year is catch the ball. He was the RB7 from week 13 on last year. That guy caught the ball a lot. I think he can still catch the ball plenty, and especially in this good offense, behind this good offensive.
He had 65 targets last year, a 12% team target share.
Yep, so I don't trust Rico or any of the other guys there. I think Zeke can easily be the RB1, at least by a little margin on this team. And he's at least getting 6 rushing touchdowns. So I'm with Andrew on this one.
So 2 things to bolster my point real quick is the last time Zeke Elliott washed up was on the Cowboys. He scored 12 touchdowns on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I found me a little article of Stephen Jones, the president of the Dallas Cowboys, son of Jerry, talking about Royce Freeman. He mentions him, and he mentions that he'll be a great complement to Ezekiel Elliott. And then we'll let these young guys between Dowdle and Davis battle it out.
Yep.
So it looks like coming from the president's mouth, this is Zeke's backfield. And he's best friends with Dak Prescott. Who doesn't want to root for that?
Yeah, we have the perfect sample where Tony Pollard was really good while Zeke was also getting 12 rushing touchdowns. So,
Jacob, let's play a name game.
Yes.
Of players that you'd rather have. Let's just compare Zeke to some of these guys.
Okay, all right.
Would you rather have Tyjae Spears?
No.
Or Zeke? Zeke or the guy you just spoke about, Brian Robinson?
But that's a full 2 rounds earlier.
Well, you're probably looking on I'm looking on Sleepers ADP right now.
I'm also looking at Sleepers ADP.
Oh, you know what? Wait. How many? I've got him 4 picks different. What are you looking at?
I've got Zeke Elliott going in the 10th round as the RB38 and Tyjae Spears going. Okay, he's not going that far ahead. Like a round ahead is Tyjae Spears.
I was talking about Brian Robinson. I just said 4 picks. 4 picks. Okay. Zeke or Chase Brown?
I will take the shot on Chase Brown. Fine.
I'll take Zeke.
Okay. What about Zeke or Jerome Ford?
I will take Zeke.
Okay. So I think in some ways we're in agreement, Jacob, just because there are some players in that range that we also like.
Yeah.
So I do think Zeke is a fine pick, and you're not guaranteed to get some of those other guys. So Zeke might be the guy that's available there.
I mostly say Chase Brown too. I think he has more upside. He's more explosive. I think there's more upside there with a younger guy in an offense that should be just as good as Dallas.
One thing to point out as well is, man, there is a giant teardrop right after that group of players that you talked about. Like you do want to hit on whichever one of those running backs that's gonna take over those backfields, because boy, after that you get a lot of guys that may not see any time on the field. So that's tough. You got to hit in that area.
It goes south quick. It goes to Jalen Wright territory.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about. It's especially after that. It's like none of those guys may see the field very much. So, you want to hit. You want to guess right on which one of these backfields these guys are going to win. The news out of Cowboys camp goes all over the place. So honestly, it could go any direction. they like Zeke. They trust Zeke. He could get back into it. I kind of like Jacob's prop bet thing now. He was winning me over a little bit with that.
Plus money.
That makes some sense. So, yeah, it's not that crazy. I just, I got to get my Zeke hate out there every once in a while.
That's fair.
I will say, and do you guys agree with me that it's probably because we have, the running back position in so many backfields has turned into like a two-headed kind of backfield. So we know we have the elite guys, but then we have so many where there's at least two good running backs on the team. But running back feels so deep this year. Like when I'm doing these drafts, I've gotten just used to being like, oh, I didn't get one of these guys, I'll get one in the next round, or I'll get one in the next round, up until you get to, maybe the 9th round, the 10th round, probably about the 10th round, then it starts to drop off. But you have a lot of time to draft these guys, and I think a lot of these guys could hit.
That's why we like Hero RB. It's all these wide receivers are getting pushed up. Chris Godwin was the wide receiver 36 we just talked about in the 7th round. Zeke is the RB 38 in the 10th. So it's just wide receivers being pushed up. We'll take the values where we can get them. That's all of our sleepers, though. Obviously, Zeke is the best out of all of them, despite anything that's been said here. Roll Fat Zeke. Also, my wife's favorite player, weirdly enough, is Fat Zeke. So I had a bit of influence there going into this one. The last thing we want to talk about, and if you have no interest, tune out now. But man, we've been waiting for weeks. I've been holding off these dogs. They've been wanting to talk about the new NCAA college football game and the experiences they have had playing it. Because Jesse has had an extra special experience with this game, going way, way, way back to 2014 whenever they first took it away. And I'm sure he's had a lot of thoughts on it. So, Jesse, I'll let you lead us off. Do you feel has this lived up to the hype, in your opinion, this NCAA game?
Yeah, if I'm answering that question, there's people online that have said it's the best sports game ever created, like that it's already been goated. And I can't disagree. I think that they did an amazing job. I think these guys closet worked on this thing a lot of those years. They didn't just like throw it out over like a 1-year period. When you look at the like attention to detail and the way the quarterbacks move and the types of throws, and oh man, I think they've been digitizing forever and mapping out every single stadium so they all look different, and then doing all of these little details inside of it. And it's funny because you guys, I wanted to do like a game pod. I didn't really want to talk about the new game. I was going to try and talk about like video game stories, because I do think that, if we got Casey on here, if we got AJ on here, I know Steven, back when we played Dynasties together, God, he was fun to play against and to try and strategize against. And I know that both him and I would stay up late at night just looking at, this is the defense I know that's coming all the time. How can I beat this? Steven, do you remember putting in lab hours and trying to figure out how to get the perfect nano blitz in? Because that was your specialty back in the day.
I think I'm one of the rare people who played Madden and NCAA that enjoyed defense as much, if not more, than playing offense.
That's cursed. What are you?
I
skipped
he was so dangerous on defense.
I was good with the sticks. I was good at baiting throws. I was good at figuring out nano blitzes and stuff like that. And so I loved playing defense. So it was fun because Jesse was an offensive minded guy and he was easily my toughest competition. But yeah, sadly, when that game ended, so did my video game career for the most part. So I haven't played it since about 2014. But we'll see. I got a lot in the works right now. But if I free up some time, I'll try to jump in on one of these games. I don't even have a system right now, so I might have to go to Jesse's house and play a game, but we'll see.
Yeah, I love the game. Andrew, don't you have any stories from through the years of a dynasty you played with your friends or on your own that was just like special?
Jesse, I wasn't old enough to really have played this game very much whenever it was.
That's true. I forget about that. He's like 20 something. Yeah,
I would have been 15 whenever the last one came out, and that's when I first started actually playing video games. And I remember the lore of it. I played a little bit of mascot mode, but I was a Madden guy through and through, so I wasn't really too much into it though.
Well, you know what I will say?
Mode was awesome.
I was the same as you, Andrew. I was a Madden guy ever since like Madden 94, which you weren't even born. You were far from being born. But Madden 94, from then on, I just played Madden. So then when we became friends, he was like, you got to play NCAA, which I knew about the game, but I just never I'd played it a couple times, but it wasn't the game that I played. The thing that threw me off was in Madden they didn't have the read option. So
Oh yeah.
when I was playing
They do
these
now.
guys, oh, they do now, yeah. But when I first started playing, like 2008 or something, maybe is when we started playing NCAA together. I didn't know how to defend the read options. Jesse was just house call this stuff, so I had to lab a lot. And you have to be more patient on defense. You can't just all out blitz up the middle to try to stop something because you'll get burned. So that took some getting used to. But once I got used to it, I knew what some of the plays Jesse was going to run. Jesse always had a quarterback that was Michael Vick-esque, so you always had to worry about that. But once they started introducing the read option into Madden, I got a little bit better at playing the NCAA game. But overall, I loved the game. It was fun.
See, and it's funny because I wasn't really even into Madden until the Eagles hired Brian Kelly, and then he brought that Oregon offense to the NFL, and then that's when like Steven and I had a couple year run there where we were playing Madden together, and the best story by far, I mean, this goes in the top on definitely on the Mount Rushmore of video game stories, was that Steven figured out if he put in hours at practice with his Madden team, you could practice, and then you would be able to add points to certain players. And Steven, talk about your wide receiver core for the Buffalo Bills that you created.
Yeah, so I figured out you could lab for all these practice hours, and you could take their speed up like 1 point, from like a 93 to a 94. But then I figured out if you did the same thing for a wide receiver, but you practice like blocking or stuff, you could take their blocking from like I'll use Sammy Watkins, the Sammy Watkins case, Jesse, the infamous one. He had like a 33 blocking overall, but you could take it up to like a 55. Like you could take it up like 30 points each time you did it. So I didn't tell any of these guys, oh yeah, I'm working on, getting their acceleration up and their speed. Meanwhile, I've got Sammy Watkins with 99 impact and run block. And I didn't mess with pass block because I'm not going to do that. So just impact and run block. And Jesse, I'd be playing and I'd run a read option, and that side would be cleared out because not only would he immediately just take down the corner, he would go after. There was more people he'd take out. He'd take out the safety. He'd chip back on the
Bobby
linebacker.
Boucher out there on the outside.
Yeah, and no, I would get these
be-
videos. I would get the videos of him filming Sammy Watkins, buh, like
was-
3 or 4 guys down the field, and back then they had pancakes was one of the stats that they kept. And I remember, I'll never forget taking a screen capture with my phone. Do you remember the number? It was funny
it was
because
ridiculous.
the second
It was
place
like-
guy.
I want to say like who would have been attacked? Maybe Trent Richardson at the time because he was still that guy's so old, but he was like a younger guy. He probably had like 15 pancake blocks. Sammy Watkins had like 175. Like
Yes, it was literally
as first place.
And even like the best guard in the league, Quentin Johnson nowadays, he might
Quentin
finish
Nelson.
the season with Quentin Nelson might finish the
si-
season with like 25 pancakes or something, and you got
True.
Sammy Watkins with 148, and I was just like, Steven would break the game. He would find ways to break the game. That's why I want him on
What
NCAA
a cheater.
25. I need
I
him.
did.
No, dude,
I was
he
a
would
game
have
breaker.
his entire
He would make
line.
rules.
His entire line would like shift over to the left, and then all the linebackers would shift to the right, and then some free safety would jump over the center. Like he would figure out these nano blitzes. So my entire offensive philosophy was based on trying to get the ball out of my hands immediately. And my dad, I was young enough. I moved from college back home for a couple years while I was getting a job before I got married, everything else. And my dad and I would sit there and stay up till all hours of the night trying to figure out, what is it, a screen pass out wide? You got to throw it immediately because Steven has this blitz. You're going to be getting hit in the mouth. And he had a guy from Cal that had 46 sacks or something one year,
Oh, it was like in the 70s.
obliterating
Come on
the
now.
NCAA record.
I will say,
But we're playing on Heisman. This is not like little kid stuff. He would figure out a way into the backfield so quickly. It was unreal.
well, another thing that I
So
used
Jacob, what do you think about the new game? And then do you got any old stories like that?
I'm absolutely loving the new game. I'm playing it way more than I should be. But fondest memories are like, it's the weirdest memories. It is the memories of going with my dad and printing off the Notre Dame roster and then going into NCAA and spending like 2 hours manually inputting names because it used to be HB number 23 was first and last name. So we would go in there and manually fill in the players' names so that when we were playing, we actually saw the players that were out there, like Jeff Samardzija and Anthony Fasano and all those wonderful guys. So yeah, those were my fondest memories of the old college football days.
That sparks one of my only memories I have from college football. Is I again only played Madden, and I thought my game was broken because none of the players' names were in there, and I didn't know why. Again, like 13-year-old me did not understand why in college football 2012 why the players' names weren't in there, and I got really concerned and confused, and I thought I broke my game, so I just stopped playing it and started playing more Madden because the players' names weren't there. Concerned
That's
me.
awesome.
I found this dude on Operation Sports that he created this whole community to work on rosters, and so since 2013 when the game stopped being made, because it's always the year it's made, whatever the name of the game is always one, like that's why it's 25. So it's 2013 when it stopped being made. There's been this community of people on Operation Sports that have kept the game going by recreating the rosters every year and doing it so you don't have to go in there and manually input all that stuff. But see, then I would want it to be as authentic as possible, so I would have to add all these team builder teams that didn't even exist in 2013, right? Because I'm trying to play in 2019 and I want it to be right. So I'd be importing all these, and then when you import these teams that you just download online, none of the names are right. So that Jacob talks about, yeah, back in the day when I'm like 38 years old, still like going in there, okay, this guy's 5'8", 175, like adjusting speed levels and trying to make it as authentic as possible. So it's very, very cool to just have this thing be like working the way it's supposed to and have people named. One thing that is really funny to me though is they don't have the coaches. And then
That
I was
is
like,
weird, isn't it?
I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And they keep
doesn't.
showing this coach on the sideline that looks so different. But then I realized they had to spend so much money to pay the players that, like, why wouldn't the coaches ask for like double, triple, whatever they were playing a player? Why wouldn't Dabo Sweeney say, you want to put my name and my face in there? Yeah, I need this much money. And then all those guys make millions and millions of dollars, and they have lawyers and agents and all these things. So I think they just avoided it altogether to save money.
They couldn't open up the likeness contract stuff until only just a few months ago. So they were scrambling to get who's in there now, all the players that are in there now, to actually be in the game. So I think coaches just got left behind. It'll be in there
So that
next
part's
year,
a
maybe.
little funny. That would be my only critique of it. But man, running an RPO, like it never worked. It's in 2013. You couldn't run a run pass option. It didn't work. It didn't look right. And now it's just like, oh man, this computer has no idea what's coming, because now I can read. Steven talks about the read option, but now I have a bubble. I have a bubble pass out here too, Steven, if you're going to bring anybody, so it's Chad got a little view of that.
New game.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't used to wear glasses, so not only are my reflexes probably slower, my vision, I wonder if I can even locate the ball anymore.
Yeah. Me and Andrew had a good time last night, didn't we?
No,
Andrew?
we didn't. No, we didn't. We didn't have any good time. I came out and I'm like, oh, it was my first user game playing on this game, and I forgot
first play.
I forgot Madden. I was like, oh, I read the defense. I'm like, all right, I think it was cover one or just like one deep safety. I'm like, oh, perfect. All right, I got this set up, and I throw the seam to the tight end, and I was like, oh crap. There's user defense. Jacob just was sitting in the middle of the field and took away the route that should have been open, and that is what sets me off, is when I read the thing correctly and it still doesn't work. I get so mad, and that's how it started. And then I fumbled one play, and then he returned two kickoff returns, and then I was down 30, and I was just mad. And then I started running every play out of the Wildcat. My quarterback got in timeout. He was on the field. I didn't bench him. My quarterback had to stay on the field and watch my running back throw the ball instead of him, because he was in that much of timeout. It was just,
I scored 63 points with a 1.5-star school. It was a good time.
I was running field goal block every time on defense. I was so upset. Forget Western Michigan. We're gonna win the Natty though. No stopping us. Jesse, are you scared? You got to be scared to play Western Michigan. Who are you in our playthrough? We've got a giant dynasty together that the people who actually have the game. And who are you, Jesse?
I'm the South Florida Bulls, and this particular
guys.
dynasty, you can't take a Power 4 team. I guess we call it Power 4 now because the Pac-12's dead. So you can't take a Power 4 team. You had to take a Group of 5 team. And, if anybody's interested, South Florida, if you want to do a rebuild, try and get to the playoff with a group of 5 team. They are real good. Boise's really good. Yeah, Coastal's not bad. I hear good things about Jacob. Jacob could be one of the more dangerous ones.
Their defense is terrible, but
And
I'll
then
give you some run.
the only other thing is you can't really adjust schedules, so it's really funny because nobody did any research. They were just like, I want to be Fresno State, but Fresno State plays at Michigan, their first game of the season, and so I get this text message like, yo, what did I do to you, man? Like, why am I playing? And I'm like, I pull up the actual schedule for Fresno State and go, dude, I could literally change one game. If I tried changing 2 games, it got this error message. So like, I play
most of them.
Yeah, and I'm South Florida. I play Bama this week because in real life, South Florida plays at Bama for their 3rd game. So that's what I have. Like there's, and then another guy played Michigan State and he couldn't kneel and it's awesome because this is what made it fun back in the day is, Casey sending videos. Casey would stay up all hours of the night and change Steven's team so that my dad would sneak downstairs and make my quarterback look like a kicker. And so I'd go in my Heisman Trophy. He's up for the Heisman Trophy, and I go out and he's got a single bar face. Dad, what did you do? I'm yelling.
And then
up
we
the
know
stairs
if you quit the game, it shows like one restart, and then we're like, what happened there?
What happened?
My Wi-Fi went out.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I've played in these like money dynasties and stuff, and I've played with these guys that are really serious. I've tried doing 24-hour dynasties before, which are nuts because you have to play they literally advance it every night. 48 hours is a pretty decent amount of time, but yeah, I thought it would just be us. It would be like me and Andrew and Jacob and AJ, playing. And then I'm literally like walking from Columbine's football field down to the weight room, and the guy comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, I hear you're starting a dynasty." So it's big right now. Like everybody's really into it. So Andrew, I'm satiated. I just had to throw that out there. It was something fun that Steven and I used to do, and I still have a ton of fond memories about trying to beat him on Madden. And then NCAA, he got really good at that too. And he's a mad scientist though. That's the part about Steven that like and it was defense. It's just so funny because you weren't like a defensive minded player back in the day.
I need help.
I won't play it. I refuse to play it. I've got a friend, speaking of mad scientist, I'll call him out. He had the game. He bought early access. He did not play the first game until after the rest of us got it post early access. And then even then we were playing like half our season before he even started because he took like 6 hours to make his playbook. And it had all this customization on it and it was all this fancy stuff. Nope. It took him so long, and he is the craziest playbook I've ever seen. It's got this monster formation where his offensive line is just 3 guys at certain points. It's absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe what people are able to do. But yeah, it is absolutely an incredible time. And Steven ran to go play it right now as he just left his chair in the middle of this. I'm sure that was what that was for. But if you guys got nothing else, the Steven is coming back. Steven, did you run to go grab your game? I'm sure you did. Welcome back, Steven.
Sorry guys, I got kid things I gotta jump on to. Love to keep going with this.
Let's get Steven out of here to go deal with the kiddos. Say goodbye to the friends at home. We'll be back at you guys with more content. Make sure you follow the page at Fantasy Guides and check out all the stuff we got going. We got reels rolling out. We're going to get more podcast content onto our reels. So keep an eye out and be ready for the season to start. Say goodbye to the friends at home.
Bye, friends. Enjoy the Hall of Fame game tomorrow.
Peace. His kids are like melting down.